Here is another oft-stated discriminating factor that purportedly defines the difference between the East Coast sound and the West Coast sound. One that is often stated is that Buchlas use complex waveforms and Moogs use simple waveforms. Well, I mean, I'll just say it. I'm not sure what this means, but I think I know where this premise comes from. And it's not whether or not Moogs or Buchlas use simple waveforms, because they both do. Both of them extensively use simple waveforms. The difference is that the Buchla has what is called a complex oscillator. Now, the complex oscillator is distinctive to Buchla and therefore a good defining factor. But instead of wording it that Buchla often used his complex oscillator in the context of his synthesizers, it's stated kind of in this weird opposite way, which is Moog uses simple waveforms. A complex oscillator is an oscillator that's made up of two oscillators. There's a principal oscillator, which is the main oscillator, and then there's a secondary oscillator, which frequency modulates the first oscillator in a variety of really interesting ways. And that's kind of the Buchla oscillator paradigm, which does, like I said, distinguish Buchla from Moog, because that pairing was not a thing that Moog specifically did and then called it, a complex oscillator, which it truly is. It's an oscillator that's capable of some very complex sounds. But the problem with that is, it's not that Moog oscillators could not do this from the start. It's not like you couldn't frequency modulate Moog oscillators. Now, it wouldn't have been the same setup as the complex oscillator, but if you go back to the 100 series that was extant at the same time as the 900 series, Buchla oscillators were no more complicated than Moog oscillators. And while you could modulate them and cross-modulate them, etc., the complex oscillator is something that came later. Now, one of the elements we're going to address is how the timelines line up, which is cause for a massive amount of confusion. And this is one of those elements that has to do with that. But the 100 series oscillators of the Buchla and the 900 series oscillators in their various forms were relatively similar in the sense that there wasn't a complex oscillator like Don Buchla adopted later in his development. So it's not that Moog has simple waveforms or simple oscillators. It's only that Buchla had an oscillator that was specifically built to generate frequency modulation outcomes. Now, certainly we could compare which Buchla modules and which Moog modules and synthesizers had which waveforms, but that's kind of pointless. The point is that this is a misconstruing of the notion that Buchla had these oscillators called complex oscillators, which actually is a distinguishing factor.